The Saddest reveals on paternity court.
I took care of them for the whole time they've been on this earth living. He didn't work. I worked 2 jobs to make sure that they were taken care of.
He is over here breaking down because he loves this child so much. I sit here day after day after day with women hoping a man would drive 16 miles to see their baby.
Mr. Mitchell is seeking 2 DNA tests to determine if he is the father of his estranged wife's children, Deshaun Jr. and Bishop. He currently has custody of them. Miss Dalton, his wife, admits to infidelity and wishes to mend their broken marriage. It will be sad if the marriage still breaks after a sad reveal.
He wasn't working. There was constant, I worked 2 jobs in the beginning when I was pregnant with my first son. I worked 2 jobs to make sure that the household was taken care of. He didn't work, he gambled. You know, he didn't do anything that he was supposed to do as
Let her finish her testimony. I'll give you a chance to respond.
As a husband and as a father, if we were going to work together and do things.
Miss Dalton counters Mr. Mitchell's claims, stating that their relationship wasn't serious when they had their first son. She admits to infidelity, but explains that Deshaun was absent for some time. She describes her efforts to support the family, working 2 jobs during her pregnancy, while Deshaun didn't contribute financially and indulged in gambling.
I didn't have no family where she was staying. It was about an hour away from where I'm originally from. You know, she get down here and got all her little friends down here, and, you know, every day she leave me with the kids because I guess she told me she works, she do this, she do that. She wanted to be able to have fun. She wanted to be able to do something for herself because she's so young. You know, that's what she keeps using as an excuse. She's young.
Deshaun asserts that Miss Dalton has moments where she leaves the house for extended periods following arguments. He claims she might stay out all night or even disappear for a week. Judge Lake questions Miss Dalton about these allegations. Miss Dalton admits to leaving once during a significant altercation that led them to separate for 7 months.
When there was an issue,
yes, I did
you
leave.
admit you left.
Yes, Your Honor.
But did you run into the arms of another man
No,
when you
Your
left?
Honor.
You didn't?
Yes,
No,
you did,
Your
Your
Honor.
Honor. Yes, you did.
I was living with my sister.
So
Your
during
Honor.
the time,
With a man
during
that
the
was sitting
time
over there
you
with her
all were
every day.
together, you were in your relationship, did you sleep with another man?
In the beginning, yes. But since we've been married, no.
Judge Lake inquires about the couple's marriage duration, learning they married when Miss Dalton was just 19. The judge then shifts her focus to Mr. Mitchell's doubts concerning the paternity of the 2 boys. Mr. Mitchell recounts how he met Miss Dalton on Facebook and later discovered she was living with another man at the time.
I happened to end up finding out once we was over my sister's house, and, you know, some guy calls her phone, Your Honor. So when the guy calls her phone, I'm like, you know, who is that? It's her cousin. That's what she says, it's my cousin, you know. So when I said, okay, well, we'll call your cousin back. Once she calls him back, he talking about they been having sex and he ain't been using condoms and she may be pregnant. This what he's saying, Your Honor.
Mr. Mitchell discovered from another man that his girlfriend, Miss Dalton, might be pregnant. Both men were unaware of each other. Although Miss Dalton defends her timeline of conception, Mr. Mitchell expresses paternity doubts. Despite these doubts, he signed their child Deshaun's birth certificate, leaving Miss Dalton shocked by his suspicions.
After Deshaun was born, you all obviously stayed together because not long after, you have another child.
Correct.
Before Bishop was born, which is my youngest son, before he was born, she was going around with some dude that she worked with.
So this is a different man from the one that told you she may be pregnant?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Dalton admits to cheating on Mr. Mitchell, even having another man over at their residence. She went to the movies with this man after the birth of their son, Deshaun. On one occasion, Mr. Mitchell came home to find the other man on their couch. The outcome of the DNA tests is vital for both.
Mr. Mitchell, you are Bishop's father. It has been determined by this court. Mr. Mitchell, you are Deshaun's father.
Miss Adams is in court concerning an urgent matter regarding her son, Mr. Adams. He is connecting remotely from Flint, Michigan due to legal restrictions. He's at risk of being arrested for unpaid child support. The goal is to prove he isn't the father of Miss Williams' 3-year-old child, which could prevent his arrest.
Mr. Adams, enlighten me on this situation. You were in a relationship with Miss Williams.
No, I really wouldn't call it no relationship. I met her at a house party. She tried to have sex with me on the first date, so that was a judge of character right there.
But you weren't in a committed relationship.
No, Your Honor.
Miss Williams acknowledges that Adams and his mother have legitimate doubts regarding the paternity of the child, while Mr. Adams is in Flint, Michigan, apprehensive about possible arrest for child support. Miss Williams points out that she offered to pay for a DNA test herself. When she informed Mr. Adams about her pregnancy, she was still involved with her ex.
When you got pregnant, you didn't even include Mr. Adams in this equation.
No, I didn't.
You thought it was your ex's. And your ex
I
said,
did.
well, it's mine too, and you all went through this whole process, but then you
Yes.
had a test, it was not your ex's. So immediately then you said it was Mr. Adams.
Yes, I located him and I told him it's a possibility that you may be the father of John.
Mr. Adams missed court due to incarceration, resulting in him being deemed the child's father by default. Miss Adams heard doubts about the paternity through her daughter, who knew Miss Williams. Miss Williams is alleged to have said Mr. Adams isn't the father, a claim she now denies.
Another situation, we was in a department store and I seen her. She was with a guy. She was around 9 months pregnant. And I asked her to sit down and talk to me for a minute. She said, I'm positive that that's not your son's child.
Did you
That's
tell
a
her
lie.
that, Ms. Williams?
No, that's a lie. She never seen me when I was pregnant.
Yes, I did.
Judge Lake acknowledges Williams' effort to better herself and work for her child. Mr. Adams recalls that after Williams had her ex-boyfriend tested, she indicated he might be the father. Williams asserts it was only a possibility, but Adams remains skeptical, citing prior contradictions from Williams and the child being named after her ex-boyfriend.
Your Honor, I do feel like it was other people as well.
What evidence do you have to suggest that?
My mother told me that she talked to Miss Williams and that Miss Williams stated that she had some other guys tested as well.
That was my ex I had tested. There were no other guys. There was just one.
Williams mentions she had scheduled DNA testing. Mr. Adams admits he missed one session due to being hungover. He also asserts that other scheduled times, Williams was absent. Judge Lake questions Adams' decision to not attend the paternity test, potentially leaving him viable for child support.
Mr. Adams, how did you even find out that you were deemed to be the father by default and you had already been placed on child support? How'd you find this out?
At the beginning of this year, I started receiving paperwork telling me that I had to make payments of $99 per month for a child that I haven't even been tested for yet.
They said she were in default. She never appeared and she left town.
Miss Adams and Williams argue over the child's paternity and their responsibilities as single mothers. Miss Adams feels that if the child is her grandson, she should have a relationship with him. Both women assert their roles as single mothers and the sacrifices they've made for their children. Will the reveal sadden Miss Adams?
It has been determined that Mr. Adams is not the father.
Take me off child support, baby.
Mr. Adams, your future was on the line because of your bad decisions. Now you should be ashamed of yourself, not sitting around dancing.
Mr. Fritz searched for his biological daughter for the past 30 years. He believes that he found her, Miss Agee, on Facebook just 4 months prior. He is here to prove that he is her biological father. Miss Agee asserts that Mr. Fritz is not her father. Will it be a happy ending for Mr. Fritz, or the saddest one of all?
He's on my birth certificate. The guy that's on my birth certificate was not my biological father. He was married to my mother when I was born, but I do know who my biological father is. I was about 8 or 9 years old. I started asking questions about who my real father was, and my grandmother was the one who raised me. She told me my biological father was Buster. That's the only person she knew as my biological father.
Mr. Fritz explains his 30-year search for Miss Agee, whom he strongly believes is his biological daughter. He shares a story from his past when he was incarcerated. During his transfer from one camp to another, he asked a friend to inform Angel's family about his whereabouts and his new location.
I don't remember that. I don't remember any
You
of
might
that.
remember these pictures right here.
What are those pictures of, sir?
That's a picture of Angel sitting on my father's lap and a picture of her sitting with my mother and father when she was
May I see those pictures?
2 years
sir?
old.
These are pictures of a baby that you say is Miss Agee sitting on your father's lap.
Yes, ma'am. Ask her if that's her. She
That is me.
picture.
Mr. Fritz searched for Miss Agee for years, even checking court records. Despite his efforts, Miss Agee is skeptical, emphasizing her need for a father during her childhood. The tension rises as both express their feelings, and Judge Lake prompts Mr. Fritz to discuss the day he located Miss Agee.
The day that I met her, I was sitting at the house, and I was on Facebook, and I just started messing with it. I started looking at relatives, this name, this name, this name, Shauna Angel. That's the name that come up with the numbers of people I was looking at. And I said, if this is Angel, I says, this is Danny Fritz, please contact me.
Mr. Fritz recounted a conversation with Miss Agee about her daughter needing money for a cheerleading outfit. Although she never directly asked him for funds, Mr. Fritz consulted with his wife and then sent $50 to support. When he later visited Thomasville and asked about the cheerleader, Miss Agee's response indicated a delay in her daughter joining the team.
If you do not believe he's your biological father, why are you so angry at him?
I'm angry because he says he is my dad. If he is my dad, why wasn't you there? I needed a dad when I was younger. I'm 35 years old now. I've lived my life. I'm living my kid, I'm with my kids now. I'm living my life for my kids. And then he wants to pop up 35 years later and say he's my dad?
Judge Lake points out the contrasting emotions Miss Agee feels. She struggles with the idea that while Mr. Fritz claims to be her father, he wasn't present in her life. Moreover, the man Miss Agee believes to be her biological father disappointed her by failing to attend her Christmas play. Everyone awaits the paternity results.
It has been determined by this court.
I am her
Mr.
daddy.
Fritz, you are her father.
Yes! You can't be that mean and not be my youngin'. I love you so much, baby girl.
Miss Stanley and Mr. Williams are in court over the paternity of their 3-year-old son, Ryan Alexander. While Miss Stanley believes Mr. Williams isn't the father, he, supported by his Aunt Mary, is confident he is. Their past relationship was primarily sexual, and Miss Stanley now regrets their involvement.
I never loved him. It was a mistake.
How did you see the relationship, Mr. Williams?
She had us planned out getting married. She had us planned out get the cakes. She had us planned out get I was taking her kids back and forth to school almost every day. I've done everything for her and them kids.
In court, a text message from Miss Stanley to Miss Combs is presented, suggesting she and Chris plan to marry. Miss Stanley denies sending it, while Miss Combs insists it's genuine. The two argue, with Williams emphasizing his aunt's role in his upbringing, making the matter her business.
Is this a message you sent?
No, Your Honor, it is not.
Well then let's pull up my Facebook page and let her
Well, then let's do that. It's none of your business. What's going on in the courtroom?
Yes, it is my aunt's business. That's my nephew and I raised him.
I don't care.
It was his son.
In court, Judge Lake looks at a photo comparing a kid, Ryan, to Mr. Williams when he was young. Miss Combs shows a message saying Mr. Williams is a good dad. Miss Stanley says she didn't send it, and hence Mr. Williams used her phone. Miss Combs says it's from Facebook.
Miss Stanley, did you send this message?
No, Your Honor, I did not. He follows me everywhere. If I'm at a grocery store, he would follow me with me not even letting him have the knowledge of him knowing where I was at. He was there.
Miss Stanley met Mr. Williams at her cousin's place, and they dated while she was on a break from her ex. Even though she dated Mr. Williams, she still slept with her ex. When her son, Ryan Alexander, was born, Mr. Williams wasn't informed until the next day. Miss Stanley explains she was under sedation. Mr. Williams is upset about not being informed.
She wouldn't even call me to let me know she was having an emergency C-section at the hospital.
I was put under sedation.
Did you not inform him on purpose?
I did not want him there because he is very disrespectful. He cusses me in front of my children.
Miss Stanley confirms that Mr. Williams' name isn't on the birth certificate. Instead, her ex's name is. This reveal saddens Mr. Williams, and he didn't show up at the hospital. If he had, and a DNA test proved he was the father, she would have let him sign. Stanley hopes the court results will end the issue.
It has been determined by this court. Mr. Williams, you are not his father.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, Your Honor.
I know that wasn't the news you wanted.
But hey, it's okay. I can move on my life. I can do better.
Mr. Rasmussen believes Miss Miller is denying that he's the father of Zaylee due to her hatred towards him. He claims he's been present in Zaylee's life, driving 160 miles every other weekend to see her, which has amounted to about 10,000 miles. Miss Miller doesn't have a driver's license or a way to meet him halfway.
She hates me because at the end of the relationship, when things got rocky, I'll admit it, I did go to another woman. I'll be the first to admit that. You know, it was my mistake.
Is that true, Miss Miller?
Yes, I was very mad at him for being a cheater. He cheated on me through pretty much our whole relationship. No, I do not hate him because of that. I lost my respect for him, yes.
Miss Miller asserts that Mr. Rasmussen is not the biological father of her child. Her reasoning is based on the timeline of conception. During that period, she was involved with someone else because Mr. Rasmussen had ended their relationship due to his infidelity.
She was conceived in March 2011. At that time, in March, I was with somebody else because he cheated on me.
But clearly, at some point, Mr. Rasmussen either thought or was informed that he was her biological father because he is paying child support, he's still driving 160 miles each way, and she has his last name.
Mr. Rasmussen believed he was the sole potential biological father of Zaley until she was about 5 or 6 months old. He confirms they never had a clear breakup, and by the time Zaley was born, she already had his last name. He affirms that his name is on Zaley's birth certificate and emphasizes his presence during her birth.
You believed you were the only possible biological father.
That is correct. There was never any, that I can recall, there was never any split there. There was, the relationship was on and off in a sense, but we never...
But by that time she was born, so she already had your name.
She already had my name.
Did you sign the birth certificate?
That is correct.
Mr. Rasmussen claims he prioritized Zaley's birth over work, but Miss Miller contradicts this, saying he was distracted during labor. While he says he used his computer to calm his excitement about fatherhood, Miss Miller believes he showed little enthusiasm about their daughter's birth.
I called my boss at work and said, hey, I gotta take some days off. I don't care if you fire me or whatever. My daughter's being born.
How do you remember it?
While I was in labor, he was sitting on one of those hospital cot beds in his own little bubble.
I admit I was on my computer, but that was far from it. How often does a man beat the woman to the hospital?
Mr. Rasmussen and Miss Miller discuss the possible paternity of Zaley. Miss Miller admits she waited to tell him about another potential father because Zaley began to resemble the other man as she grew. Mr. Rasmussen believes Zaley looks like him, presenting childhood photos for comparison. Did the DNA results reveal a sad truth?
It has been determined by this court. Mr. Rasmussen, you are not the father. You just showed me where your priorities were right there. What you cheering? I'm a single mother with nobody that loves me or my child. What you cheering for? He is over here breaking down because he loves this child so much.